Hello friends, I am Shane Desai and in today's video we are going to discuss one of the important topic or poem from the modern Indian writings in English translation, and the poem is Morsel, written by Ali Sardar Jafri. So in this video we will see about the poet, the life details and the biographic details of the poet Ali Sardar Jafri, and then we will see about the poem or the background of the poem, and then we will go to the detailed explanation of the poem. So I would request you to stay tuned and watch the video till end. So this is the first slide, and on the right top and side corner you can see the image or the photo of the poet. He is Ali Sardar Jafri. So let's begin with the first point. Ali Sardar Jafri, one of the most celebrated progressive poets, literary critic, public intellectual, editor and film lyricist, was born on 29th November 1913 in Balrampur, Uttar Pradesh. So this is his timeline, his time period. He was born on 29th November 1913 in Balrampur, which is in the Gondal district of Uttar Pradesh. Now, Jafri was not only a poet but also he was a literary critic, public intellectual, editor and film lyricist. He died on 1st August 2000 in Mumbai, Maharashtra. So this is the day, this is when he died, when we lost him. He was the contemporary of the famous Urdu poet Faiz Ahmad Faiz. So he was the contemporary of the poet Faiz Ahmad Faiz. Contemporary means of the same age, of the same era or of the same decade. So he was the contemporary of the famous Urdu poet Faiz Ahmad Faiz. Jafri, due to his contribution in the Urdu literature, was awarded with Gnanpith Award in 1997. He was also honored with Padma Shri in 1967. So this is his achievement. He was awarded with Gnanpith Award in 1997. Now Gnanpith is one of the highest honorary award of India, awards of India, and Gnanpith, more or less we can also consider it as an Indian Nobel Prize. But before that, in 1967, he was also honored with Padma Shri. Jafri also used a pen name, that is Sardar. So Sardar is his pen name, his pseudonym, and he used this name for his writings. Jafri at the age of 8 could recite 1,000 verses from the poetry of Anis. So we can see that very early age of 8 he could recite 1,000 verses, 1,000 lines from the poetry of Anis. Anis is another famous poet, Mir Anis. And at the very early age, Jafri had developed his interest in literature. He started writing at the age of 15, and at the age of 17 he began writing short stories. So here we can see that even in his teenage, at the age of 15, he started writing himself, and he began writing short stories in the age of 17, at the age of 17. So we can see that in the very early age he developed his interest in literature, and he began writing. He entered the world of Urdu literature with his collection of short stories Manzil in 1938. However, he turned to poetry later on. So officially he entered into the ocean of literature, or he plunged into the ocean of literature with his collection of short stories, that is Manzil. Manzil is the title which was published in 1938, but later on he turned towards poetry. Now the strange thing about this is that if we see the poets or the writers of the English literature, then what we will find is that they started their literary career by writing poems. But here Ali Sardar Jafri, who began his literary career by writing short stories, and then later on he moved to poetry. So this is a kind of surprising thing about Jafri if we compare him with the writers of English literature. His revolutionary and patriotic poetry brought him into spotlight, and due to his involvement into political activities, he was taken into custody. So Jafri was a revolutionary, he was a patriotic, and he also wrote revolutionary and patriotic poetry. And due to his involvement in political activities, he was also taken into custody, or he was taken into legal process, legal judiciary custody. And because of his revolutionary and patriotic poetry, he was brought into spotlight. He became center of attention. He came into limelight, right? He was also a member of Communist Party. So he was also a communist. We can see that he was a member of Communist Party. So Jafri was also a communist. His aim through poetry was to create political awareness among the masses. Now the aim or the reason why Jafri used to write poetry was because he wanted to bring awareness, political awareness among the public, among the general public, and this is the reason he used to write revolutionary and patriotic poetry. This is about the poem. Before directly going into the explanation of the poem, we will have to see the background of the poem and what this poem is. What is this poem all about? So, this poem Morsel, translated from Urdu by Kathleen Grant Jagger and Bidar Bakht, is a Marxist political satire on capitalism, capitalist class, and the system of cultural hegemony, right? So this poem Morsel was originally written in Urdu and then it was later on translated into English. It was translated by Kathleen Grant Jagger and Bidar Bakht. Now this poem Morsel is a Marxist poem. It is a Marxist political satire on capitalism and capitalist class and the system of cultural hegemony. The poet Jafri has satirized or criticized the capitalism, the system of capitalism and the system of cultural hegemony. Now before going into further details, we will first have to understand what cultural hegemony actually is. Now here you can see the diagram or the cycle of cultural hegemony. The first point is domination. Now here domination means someone who has the control. Now control on what? Control on the means of production. There are four means of production: land, labor, capital and entrepreneur. So here as we are discussing about capitalism and capitalist class, we will take the example of capitalism and capitalist. So the owners of the big industries or the industrialists who invest their money, who invest their capital in the market, in their industry, so they will have a kind of domination in the society. And as they have the domination, for example, let's take Reliance Industries Limited. So the owner of the Reliance would invest his capital, a big amount of money in his industry, and because of that he would be able to shake the economy of the country, and hence he would have the domination of the economy. He will become the ruling class, the industrialists, the group of industrialists or the capitalist people. Those who have invested their capital will become an ruling class, and because they will become a ruling class, they will manipulate the lower class. Now how they will manipulate the lower class? Now they are the industrialist people. They come under the class of capitalism, but the people, the employees, those who work in these industries, in these companies, they are not industrialists, they are not capitalists, they do not have such big amount of money and capital, and for that reason they will work under these people, they will work in their companies, in their industries, and hence they will manipulate the lower class. They will not be able to reach towards the height of the ownership of the company. They will never be equal to the owner of the company. They will just work as an employee of the company, and this will become an accepted culture. For example, the son or the daughter, the children of employee would never be able to reach to the height of the ownership. They will never be able to become equal to the industrialist. But the son or the children of the owner of the company, the industrialist, they will become the industrialist itself. They will continue their legacy and they will become the owner of their company. So this will become an accepted culture. So this poem Morsel is an actually satire on this cultural hegemony, and the poet is against this system of cultural hegemony. As Jafri himself was a revolutionary and a communist, he has favored the concept of classless society given by Karl Marx in this poem. So Jafri, as we have seen earlier, he was a revolutionary, a patriotic, and he was also a member of Communist Party. So he has favored the concept of classless society in this poem. Now this concept, this idea of classless society is given by Karl Marx. According to Karl Marx, there should not be any classes in the society. For example, which we discussed, that the capitalist people they belong to the class of capitalism. But according to Karl Marx, this should not be done in this society. This practice should be avoided. All the ownership should be owned by the public. The ownership should be public. It should not be private. All the industries, all the ownership of the means of production, I mean to say, should be public. It should not be a private ownership, and that is how there would be a classless society. So he presented his sympathy and soft corner for the labor class or the exploited factory workers in this poem. The poet Ali Sardar Jafri has supported, he has presented, portrayed his sympathy, soft corner for the labor class or the working class or the exploited factory workers in this poem. It shows that how the system of cultural hegemony increases the gap between the rich and poor. It here means that this poem shows that how the system of cultural hegemony increases the gap between rich and poor. The rich becomes more richer, the poor becomes more poorer. All the profit is been taken by one single person or the owner of the company. So this increases a gap between rich and poor in the society. Through this poem, he has also raised the question, which is actually the last line of the poem, stands asking mutely, can anyone save me? So the poet, with the help of this poem, has also raised the question in front of the readers, and that is also the last line of the poem. And because of this question, this poem is an open-ended poem. The poem does not ends over here, but it actually starts from here. The interpretation and the understanding of this poem from here is kept on the perception of the readers. So this is an open-ended poem. So this is the poem, and we will discuss the poem line by line. The first line, his mother weaves silk for living, his father spins cloth. Now, in the first line itself, we are being informed that there's a boy and there's a mother, and whose parents, both mother and father, are factory workers. They are working in a factory, in an industry. His mother weaves silk for living. His mother is working in a silk factory. His father spins cloth. His father is also working in a cloth factory, right? He left the womb's darkness for a hobble's black heart. Now here, if you see, then the poet has used the word that he left the womb's darkness. So the poet is telling that the mother's womb is dark, and the literal meaning we can also consider that the mother's womb is dark because there is no light in it. But the symbolical meaning is that when he will leave his mother's womb, he will enter into the dark world, or the dark reality, or the harsh reality of the world. And the world is more darker than the womb, his mother's womb. And here the word hovel means a small cottage or a small room. So this also shows the condition, the financial condition, economic condition of the family, that as they are factory workers, as they are working in industry, they are having a little small cottage, a small room in which they are living. So the boy, he will leave the womb's darkness and he will enter into the harsh reality, the dark reality of the world. When he leaves this place, he will become fodder for the mills. Now here the word fodder means the food which has been given to animals. So he will become a kind of food for the capitalist people, right? But the another interpretation we can take that just like his parents, those who are factory workers, they both were working in factory in the similar manner, in the similar kind. This boy will also work in the factories. He will be another worker, a laborer in the factory. So this can be also taken as another interpretation. To feed his innocent body, he will feed money's endless hunger. Now the aim or the goal of the factory workers or the laborers are not to gain luxuries of the world. Their only aim is to gain their daily wages, their livelihood, to gain their bread, and to feed their innocent body. But in order to do that, he will feed money's endless hunger. Now money's endless hunger over here, it is symbolically said that the capitalist people, these people are working to feed their body, to feed their stomach, but in order to doing that, they will, because of them, the profit will go to the capitalist or the owner of the industry. And money's endless hunger, the eyes of the industrialists, the eyes of the capitalists are always filled with cupidity. Their hunger for money is endless. And next line, his hands will squander flowers of gold, his body will spend its silver. Now this shows the skillfulness of the factory workers, that this boy will be very skillful, and in order to work, he will do a very hard work, he will do bone breaking work, and he will produce product and goods, a best product. But by doing hard work, by breaking his own body, by spending his own silver, he will help the capitalist people or the owner of the factory to gain all the profit. All the hard work will be done by this boy or the factory workers or the laborers, but all the the major chunk of profit will be taken by the factory owner. His heart's blood will fuel the lamps burning brightly in the windows of banks. This line also says the same idea, that all the factory workers will do bone breaking hard labor, but ultimately the profit will go to the owner of the factory. This child, small, innocent, destined for capital's jaws.
stands asking mutely, can anyone save me? Now here we are being told that this is a child, a small child who is innocent, who is working, who is destined, whose fate, whose destiny is to work just like as his parents in this factory or in this industry. And this also shows the the condition of this child. He stands asking mutely that can anyone save me, can anyone save this factory workers, this factory laborers. And hence, as I told earlier, that this poem is an open-ended poem. From here, the interpretation, the understanding is kept in the to the perception of the readers. And this is the last line also is a paradoxical line or oxymoron. Stands asking mutely. He, without uttering a word, without speaking, he is speaking. Without uttering a word, he is asking that can anyone save me, can anyone save this labor class, can anyone save this working class, and can anyone change the system of this cultural hegemony, can anyone save these exploited factory workers. And this is the idea of the poem, right? And this is how the poet Ali Sardar Jafri has satirized the capitalist system, the cultural hegemony. And the poet Ali Sardar Jafri has supported the factory workers. So this was all about the poem. Thank you for being in my presentation. Thank you for listening me. I hope you might have understood the meaning of the poem. And there are many interpretations of the poem. A poem does not has the meaning, but it has a meaning. So read the poem, have your own interpretation. Once again, thank you.